Hello and welcome back for another episode of this season of Try This on Wisp Sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kirstin Lauritzen, and goodness, we've just wrapped up two races, and I should say, because I got corrected on this before, it was a full Ironman followed by a half Ironman, so it's not just a small race. Did two big races back to back, and it literally feels like it's been a month since finishing up that half Ironman, and it's only been a week. My sister has done both of these races with me, and she was messaging me yesterday saying, how are you doing? And I feel like this week was the longest week ever. It really did. It felt like a month had gone by, or practically a year, and it was only a week. So I thought that was kind of an interesting look back. And I didn't really do much training at all this week. Just took it really easy. My coach didn't really put anything in there. So I didn't really do anything into my app that he sends me all my stuff on. So I didn't really do much at all. And that was actually really nice. I really needed the break. But by Saturday, I was starting to feel like, I could potentially like go out for a run. I'm starting to feel like I'd like to get back moving again. And part of it is that, you start to get sort of used to and conditioned to, doing something, right? So that's pretty normal. But my coach really wanted to make sure that I was feeling ready to get back and like mentally wanting to get back into training, because, you really want to avoid things like burnout. Just working isn't always the best approach. We really want to have a part of this that we actually enjoy. And we do want in some ways to make this fun. I was actually watching, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I saw somebody else that did their first Ironman, and I think it was the Spudman, and they finished the race and said that their goals were to have fun and to finish. And he did finish, but he goes, I'm not sure I really had that much fun. And I do think that sort of is kind of a weird side of triathlon, where there's parts of it that you love, and there's parts of it that maybe you don't like a whole lot. And sometimes that aren't super fun, but the idea is to try to have races that do turn out to be fun, that you do enjoy. So that was kind of a piece of just this last week, was just decompressing, allowing the brain to just relax, rest, do what you want to do, fill your time how you want to, and then just allow for your body to kind of give you those signals that you're ready to go again. So that was actually interesting, because that's really what I want to talk about today is time. I've been doing a lot of reflecting on this last year, and I know that a lot of people make their goals, at the beginning of the year with New Year's, because it kind of seems like this appropriate time to do it. But I find that I tend to set goals at many different times of the year, and so and I set either mini goals or kind of bigger long-term goals, and that's part of what I want to talk about today, is that is basically time. Because one of the questions that I get asked the most is, how do you train for this when you have, all these other things going on? I get I don't think I could ever do that. How often, how long do you train? What does your training week look like? Which we have built into this podcast. For those of you that have been following along and listening, you've heard about what my training looks like each week. But generally, I'm doing hour-long-ish workouts during the week to try to help, balance out my time with being somebody who works, but also then kind of loading a lot more of my longer workouts over the weekend, where there's a little more space to do that. So I'm not necessarily spending 30, 40 hours, 20 hours, 18 hours training. I'm often spending anywhere between 10 to 10 to 13 to 14. And I really do think that this is a sport you can train for an Ironman with being, having somebody that maybe doesn't have a whole lot of time to do it. You just might want to consider giving yourself like a longer period of time to train. So like a year versus 4 months, right? So one of the things that I've been reflecting on as well as I was starting off with this whole thing is that I have a tendency to fill my time. So as I create it, and as I create more time by either taking something off of my schedule or as things have sort of come to an end, I have a tendency to like fill that time, right, with a bunch of different things. What I found though is that because of this week of not training, I ended up getting a lot of tasks done around the house and things that I had sort of been putting off for quite a while because I had some extra time. And there's been several things that have sort of come to an end as far as my time goes. This last year, I was president of a local Rotary Club, and then I had this Ironman stuff, and then business started taking off, and then we were also remodeling our house, which we still currently are, but we've put all those projects off because of all the races and the things, and you need your weekends in order to do that. So we had just so much stuff going on this year, and it made me think about something that I kind of grew up doing, which was I was quite a busy kid, and I learned how to perform being very, very busy. So one of the things that I would like to do this year as a goal going in is to try to create a little bit more space. And to really practice my yeses and my nos. I think a lot of people have heard about this where you practice saying yes when it's something that's a really good thing for you, and then being very good at saying no. I've definitely been in this position before, and I would really like to create a little more space and a little more time for training, a little more time for not just training, but for the things that support training. Because I'm not really sure if I could say this one way or another, but I do think that when we have too many things on our plate, obviously that increases stress, which we've talked about quite a few times on this podcast, that stress in and of itself is just hard on our body. But when I don't have a whole lot of time, some things tend to fall off of my priority list, like cooking, for example. It actually makes me quite frustrated, so then there's another moment of stress, right? When I run out of time in my day to cook, and then I'm scrambling, putting things together, and I just know it's not quite the meal that I would have loved to have prepared. And it also is oftentimes lacking in things that I know that we both need. And so that in and of itself gets just really frustrating for me. And when I create a little more time, I find that I have more energy to want to put towards cooking. So that's kind of one of my motivating reasons to try to limit my schedule and limit my commitments in that sense, is so that I can try to create a little more time and space for other things that do help support, better training. But they're not only going to support better training, they're also going to support better health, right? Another thing that I really want to work on as well is for training purposes. I really would like to switch my sleeping schedule around so that I can be able to wake up for my swim practices a little bit easier. As I was talking about with Chris on Wisp Sports right before this, was that one of the things that I've noticed as a reflection of this particular year is that the races, is that one of the things I really need to do is work on getting my swim faster, but not for the purpose of swimming faster for overall times, which is obviously part of it. But the bigger piece is being able to be confident swimming with the 30-minute mile swimmers, and trying to make my way up there a little bit faster. Because one of the things that I've reflected on is that the athletes who were in the water earlier in the day, faster in the day, they were finishing earlier in the day. And I think maybe this is just me reflecting on the fact that I had two very, very hot races this year, but it's an observation of mine that it doesn't necessarily mean that the race is any easier, but they're likely also, I will also say this, they are likely also more trained athletes than I am. But the point being, the sooner they got in the water, it seemed kind of that they had in more or less kind of better days. And that's also from talking with my athletes as well that I work with who had been at similar races as I was, and they had been in the water sooner, and they were off the course, before it got really hot, stuff like that. So that's just one thing that I really want to work on is being able to get up a little bit sooner in the day and not kind of fighting waking up at 5 a.m. to go swim. So that's a big one for me. The other one, though, that I really wanted to mention is the other piece as far as time goes is that one of the first things that when I started training for this, a friend of mine who had done plenty of Ironmans in the past had said, make sure that you're spending time with your husband. And this could be applied to husband or family, right? It's so easy to fill the time when you create it and not prioritize some of the things that are really important. But that's one of the biggest things that I've realized this year is that if you have a full-time job, you can absolutely do this. If you have a full-time job and a family, you can absolutely train for triathlon and Ironman, and it just becomes part of your lifestyle. But also remember too, that like your family can be involved as well, and often is involved, right? You might be running with your kids in a stroller, or they might be, going out and helping to support you on your bike or on long training sessions. They might be your aid stations, right? There's so many different ways that your family is involved, and they're in many ways training alongside this with you. Like I didn't really quite realize how much, my husband was in on this with me. But when I got to the end of that Ironman in Coeur d'Alene, I realized like they are very much so invested in this, almost as much as you are. Like, sure, you're doing all you're spending all the time training, but they're like emotionally invested, and they've sacrificed along with you throughout the year in order to help you get to that finish line. So I really think that it's important to make sure that you plan in time with your husband and your family or wife, or however this goes, just your significant other, right? That there is time, filling in that time is with those people is really important. If they're in your, or friends, even, if a significant other isn't something that you have, filling in time with friends that mean a lot to you as well. It's good to keep, those relationships as a priority, because they're in it with you too. So, that's mainly what I wanted to cover today is just, you can absolutely do this and you can be, I've heard the term time starved, and you can totally prepare and you can train for Ironmans. Here's a couple of tips though that I've picked up that I've found to be really helpful for when I get asked to do things. I will kind of work them through these next few tips to try to help me figure out if this is something. It's kind of like a compass. Should I actually do it or not? The number one is know the value of your time, and also know your value. When you get asked to do things and you're not sure if you should take them on, but maybe you're feeling guilty for saying no, I think the really important thing is when you say yes to something, you're inherently saying no to something else. So if family or friends or training or cooking or whatever it is, if that's what's important to you and you're already struggling to put all of those things together and do all those things and do them well, arguably you may not have time to put on another, thing, on another commitment on top of that. So I think that's one of the biggest things is how much is your time worth? And also recognizing too, I know it's glorified to be busy all the time and to do all the things, but being able to spend time resting is really important as well. As I mentioned above, having this week to just rest and recover and recuperate did wonders for my body and my brain. And I can still, from the perspective of an athlete, I can still feel that my knees are still a little bit tired, as I kind of mentioned a couple episodes ago, as far as cartilage stress. Like, I definitely think my body is still recovering, and it's still trying to get back on board. But point being, spending time resting is really important. But if we just continue to fill and fill and fill and fill, then we have less and less and less time to rest. So that's part of recovery. The next question is it really worth it? Is it really worth spending your time doing said thing? And it might be, right? It might be that this commitment that you're looking at, or this thing that you want, that you're being asked to do, or this thing that you're thinking about doing is worth it. But is it really worth it in the perspective of where your goals are, right? Having good discernment as far as what you're trying to accomplish is really important. And that leads also into, is it really the right time for me to do this or to be involved? And that's because it may be something that's worth it. It might be something that's going to help you in some way, or it's going to help other people in some way. But now may not be the right time. Right now, keeping in mind what your goals are, that's how you can discern when something might be the right time to do it. And those are just some of the questions that I kind of walk through when I get asked, oh, can you come do this? Or, oh, can you be on this committee? Or, oh, can you do this? Taking a step back and kind of understanding what my goals are is key. That all being said, we have to have goals somewhere, right? We have to set those goals. We have to have a goal that we're working towards if you're going to kind of apply those in that sense, right? So of course I'm talking in the perspective of triathlons or Ironmans, and it may not be an Ironman that you're training for. It might be a sprint or an Olympic, but it's just keeping those things in mind as we setting that goal, knowing what you're working towards is key. And then deciding how much time am I really going to need in order to do this in the week? And then what are some of those supporting things that I need to do, and make sure that I keep those in mind as I go into this training season, so I can get the most out of my training, which is the point of all of it, right? So that's our episode for now. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Wisp Sports on all social media channels, and make sure to share this episode with anyone you think might love it. If you could also leave us a review on the podcast app that you use, that would help us get this episode out to more people. You can also follow me at Dr. Kirstin on Facebook and Instagram, and you can also find me at drkirstin.com. If you'd like to reach us with any comments or questions about this episode, you can at info@wispsports.com, and you can always leave a direct message with us over on social media as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week. Take care.